can't have a Search for Awesome podcast, apparently, without talking about Casey Neistat. So, because we have every single one. But I do feel like it's merited this time for sure. He had a discussion with a YouTube bigwig. And basically, this guy's name is Robert Kyncl, I think is how you say his name. He's the chief business officer of YouTube. And this is a pretty big deal because YouTube has been pretty quiet and like not really wanting to be too vocal about a lot of the changes they've been making. A lot of creators are really bitter with YouTube about a lot of the changes, the demonetization, all this stuff. They're making changes and it's making creators uncomfortable. And the reason why they're making changes is because some of the creators are getting kind of out of line. They're making advertisers uncomfortable because they're posting things they shouldn't be posting. And advertisers are putting their ads on there, not realizing what they're putting their ads on. It's causing this big friction. YouTube's having to just trying to manage this mess. And basically nobody's happy with how it's been handled, except for me. Like, I think I understand YouTube's in a hard spot. Like, you're trying to make your advertisers happy, but you're also trying to create this totally free platform where anybody can do anything they want. Like, imagine how difficult that would be to manage.
People tend to forget when they talk about YouTube and they talk about how YouTube's frustrating them or how YouTube's making good decisions or bad decisions. This is a large corporation. You know, there's billions and billions and billions of content creators. I mean, the channels go on and on and on. And then you have several people that have, 5, 6, 8 different types of channels just under them. And to be able to manage all that in a way that makes sense, in a way that actually takes the YouTube community forward, I don't think is an easy job. I don't think that's something to take lightly. This is not, like when you compare this to like TV, which we've done before previously on this podcast. When you compare it to TV, you got to think about it. You've got someone like, say, NBC, where they only have so many different types of shows that they have to manage. They don't have to manage all of cable. They just have to manage the shows that show on their channel, right? But YouTube has basically almost the equivalent of all of cable and then some to manage.
There's way more content to go through. And I understand that a lot of people who are on YouTube have been very vocal and not on board with a lot of the changes that YouTube has been making. But I got to understand they're in a tough spot. But it was really cool to see Casey Neistat finally get to sit down and actually put a face on YouTube. This is a person who is one of the leaders in YouTube and actually has a voice there. And there's really, I'll be honest, although I did enjoy the interview, I'll be honest, I walked away from it not really satisfied with a lot of the answers to the questions, and also not necessarily satisfied just in general. It was a good interview, but I don't think I really learned anything. That's kind of where I landed. But there was 2 interesting things that were said. One thing that Robert, the CBO of YouTube, said is that both YouTubers and the advertisers think that YouTube favors one or the other. Like, advertisers think that YouTubers get all the love from YouTube and like they want to just, really defend the freedom for them to do whatever they want. And then YouTubers think that they're trying to squelch them and take away their freedoms. So it's really, I thought that was a really interesting point. And I bet you that's absolutely true. Is like, it's a hard thing to balance. And I bet you the advertisers feel like that because their ads have been probably put on some videos that they're not really comfortable being put on. And it just happened because of YouTube's, that's how YouTube does it.
And you got to imagine the frustrating position for these advertisers, because you got to think about it like, we have a platform. If we don't like the way things are going, we can make a video right there on YouTube about it. These advertisers can't make an ad to express their frustration. You know what I mean? Like, because that does them no good. They need to make ads that sell their product. So where is their platform to speak out against this? They don't even have that platform to air their grievances over YouTube's decisions. So I guess that's why we don't really even see it that way. We don't see that the advertisers are looking at YouTube like they favor, the content makers, and content makers are seeing each other's frustrations. So it seems like it's only one-sided, but when you really look at it, I see where it could go both ways.
Well, you say that, but I'm sure there's these are the people that are funding YouTube, so I'm sure they have the ears of the executives, and that's probably one of the things that, they can't air their grievances to the public, but I'm sure that they get to hear from the if they're a big advertiser, I should say. I bet the small ones can't, but the big ones, I'm sure, can air their grievances.
And that's what I'm referring to. They're not airing it to the public, right? So we're not seeing, in our mind, you know, we're seeing the YouTubers complain, but we're not seeing the advertisers complain. We're just hearing other YouTubers complain and validate our feelings, right, based off of how they feel. And so it's just pushing that home that, yeah, they're definitely in favor of the advertisers, when because they don't have that public platform like we have, they're feeling the same way. And YouTube's in the middle trying to do the best they can to manage this.
Yeah,
and it's not easy, because they've got to make it work for everybody, for the YouTubers and for the advertisers.
And I think you hit the nail right on the head, man. They have to make it work for both, because they need both. They can't survive without both. One other interesting thing that Casey brought up, and it didn't really get discussed that much in the video itself, but I want to discuss it now. He brought up that there are no YouTubers that sit at their board table. Here's how he said it, and this is why I thought it was interesting. He said, like, if you go to movie studios, the people, you know, there are people at the top level that have been involved with making movies. You know, you go to the TV studios, same thing. But YouTube, everyone on the top really doesn't know what it's like to be a creator. And so they really don't know how it feels to have some of these decisions made, and how it feels to be powerless sometimes. So I find it really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting point to bring up, you know, because imagine what kind of perspective that, let's say Casey Neistat sat at the table. Imagine what kind of perspective he could bring to the board when they're trying to make a big decision that could impact YouTubers, you know, and he could advocate for them. You know, maybe they need like a CYO, like a chief YouTuber officer, somebody who's, and again, they don't have to just do what that person says, but it's just, it would be good for them to see the perspective. A lot of times it feels like a lot of these decisions are made without anybody who it really impacts, you know, at least in terms of YouTubers at the table.
No, I mean, I have to agree. I wonder how much impact, you know, these advertisers have in these meetings, you know, if they can come in and sit in these. I mean, that's something I don't know, obviously, but I feel like to have a YouTuber in there, it would have to be somebody that is no longer making that content, because naturally the fear there would be that they're, you know, trying to help make changes in favor of them, not in favor of the community.
I mean, that's a good point. The only thing is, I'm sure there's somebody, right? There's got to be somebody that they could probably bring in if they were interested. I just thought it was an interesting point. You know, it would be good to have somebody who actually understands the YouTubers. And again, as a creator, I don't really feel like YouTube's done a bad job personally. I think they have a really challenging task in front of them. And but I do understand the grievances of the creators, that they're like, they just feel powerless. They feel like at any point they could just, you know, turn off something that impacts their business, and all of a sudden their full-time job just goes poof, you know, or they could make a decision that tanks the platform altogether. All the YouTubers leave, and it leaves a lot of people jobless. So I don't know. I see both sides. It's a tough thing. I'm glad that YouTube actually allowed this interview, because it does show a step in the right direction, that they want to communicate. And that was one of the big messages in the video, is that, you know, for them to succeed, creators have to succeed as well. That our purposes are aligned.